Welcome to Gregory Reinemer's physics class at Highline Community College. Hey, if you want to follow along by downloading this workbook, here's the name of the workbook, Reinemer Gregory Physics Class, Highline Community College. Click on the link directly below the video and scroll all the way down to the bottom in the other spreadsheet section. At the very bottom, you can download this workbook. Hey, in this video, Gregory has me guest appearing to show you how to use Excel to plot this function. This function shows us the acceleration of a block up a ramp. And we're going to learn a few things here. We're going to learn how to take an equation like this, list the variable parts, the number parts that will go into our formula. So you actually have to set this up. Then we're going to build a table with and this will be a function of m, and little m is going to be the hanging mass. We're going to build our function here. All of this is going to be formulas based on our formula inputs. And then we're going to make a chart to visually see this. So the whole idea is put all of your numbers and variables here, build your formulas and charts. Then anytime you change your inputs, all the formulas, all the charts will update. We'll also learn some important lessons about cell references in formulas. And we'll see the sine, cosine, and radian functions in Excel. All right, here's our formula here. Very carefully, look, there's a g, and little m, a big M, theta. We listed those here. We listed the numbers. We also are going to have to vary our m. So we're going to have a column here. This will be our x value on our scatter chart that we're going to do. This will be our y, or our f of m, and our m and f of m. But we want this to change also. We don't want to have to type. See, we have a start here, and we're going to increment. So I don't want to type 0.04. Oops, it's not 0.04. It's 0.4. It's not 0.4. And then 0.41. I don't want to have to type that in. I want to be able to build this whole column based on these inputs. So I'm going to highlight these. Click in this cell, and I'm going to do a formula. And you always start a formula in Excel with the equal sign. I'm going to say, hey, that's my start m. Enter. And now I'm going to do another formula equals this plus the increment. Now, the trick here is we have to learn the difference between a relative cell reference, which is the default, and an absolute cell reference. See, because if I'm building a column that's going to start here and add this little increment each time, well, this formula has always got to look at the one cell above plus whatever this increment is. Now, let's just look. If I enter this formula, Control Enter to keep the cell highlighted, and put the formula in the cell. And I point to this little in corner. You can see that little box there. If I move my cursor, that crosshair right there is called a crosshair or angry rabbit. You can click and drag your formula. Now, that's not going to work because these cell references inside our formula are called relative cell reference. It means from the point of view of me, the formula, where am I always going to look? Well, that blue one's always going to look one above. But I didn't want this B12 to move down as I copy the formula. I want it locked there. So I'm going to have to come back up here, and I have to put dollar signs to tell Excel that that B10 is locked. So I hit with my cursor touching B10, I hit the F4 key. That locks it. Those dollar signs are arbitrary symbols that says from now on, that cell reference is locked there. Notice when I come down here, when I copied the formula down here, notice it was moving relatively. So the green box moved down as I copy the formula down. But now that I've locked it, when I copy it down using that little angry rabbit, you can see when I put this in edit mode, double click it, you can see, it's locked. So that's called a relative cell reference. This is called an absolute. I'm going to drag this all the way down. And so you can see that formula worked perfectly all the way down, one cell above plus locked on that one. And what's so nice about that, I clicked escape there. What's so nice about that is I can change this to 1. and everything updates. That means our formulas, this formula will be based on that M, and our chart will change also. I'm going to Control Z. That's undo. You can also use that button right there. And now let's build our formula. That is our huge formula we're going to have to build. Equal sign starts off any formula. And now we need G. So I'm going to click on G, acceleration meters per squared of gravity. And I'm going to have to hit the F4 key, because as I copy this down, everything's going to have to be locked on these inputs here, except for the little m. So anytime we run into a little m, we'll use a relative cell reference. All right, the next thing is times. And I'm going to have to go open parentheses, and then little m. Don't hit the F4 key. And I'm going to have to subtract the big M. Little m is going to be our hanging mass. Big M is going to be our mass of block moving up and down the ramp. I'm going to have to hit F4 to lock that. All right, now I need to multiply. Notice it says sine theta. Well, theta is given in terms of degrees, and we need radians. No problem. We're going to use the sine function and the radians function. So I'm going to type sin, open parentheses, and there it wants a number. This is given in degrees, and I need radians. Radians, open parentheses. I click on that 45, and that has to be locked going down. Now this is a function within a function, so I have to type close parentheses, close parentheses. You could tell that as soon as it's purple, it's the same color as that. You're done with that particular function inside of a function. Now we need minus mu, and mu is going to be our coefficient of kinetic friction. If I sound like I know what I'm talking about in regards to physics, it's just because Gregory told me, typed all this out. I just know the Excel part. I hit the F4 key because that needs to be locked going down also. All right, so we have minus mu, then we need to multiply times big M, and then this cosine. So multiply, and there's big M, mass of block, F4 times, and we'll use the cosine. Just like there's a sine function, there's a cosine. And then we'll use radians again. F4 to lock it going down. And then close parentheses, close parentheses. I have my cosine. Now I need to close off. That green parentheses right there is that one, because all of these things in here need to be calculated before we do our division there. So I'm going to close parentheses. And when you get lots of parentheses like that, it's good to match up the color. Green, green. I know I got it right. / for division. And now I'm going to have to do another parentheses because I want to force this addition first. And it's going to be the little m plus big M. And that one's going to be locked. Oops, I hit the F5 key, which is go to. I meant to hit the F4. F4 puts those secret dollar signs in. Now I'm going to close parentheses. I can see those green ones. Looks like I'm ready to be done. I have to close parentheses, so then all of that could calculate before it multiplies by G. I got my fingers crossed when you're doing big formulas like this. For example, I'll make an error. I didn't put the last parenthesis. I'll hit Enter. Now, when you're making a big formula like this, Excel's going to try and be polite and try and guess. Do not click yes. Click no. Even though it got it right there. Click no. Click OK. And then go and try and find your problem. I can see I don't see a black parentheses. I need to see a black parentheses so I know that that one is matched up with that. Now I can Control Enter. Most of it's just hit Enter, right? It puts it down. But Control Enter is nice because Control Enter. And then because we're putting the formula in the cell and immediately going to do something to the cell, which is we're going to copy the formula down. And I'm actually going to make a mistake here. Let's say I forgot to lock this, because when you're doing a formula this big, you got to see how to fix mistakes. I forgot to lock that. So now I can copy this down over here. We copied it down using that crosshair angry rabbit. Well, because there's something to the left here, you can double click and send it down. I can already see I have trouble going on here. I'm going to double click here to put it in edit mode. Maybe I'll come down here. Double click to put it in edit mode. That value error. That value error says there's a problem with your formula, which means you're trying to multiply a word times a number, which is not possible. So now I'm going to look through all of my cell references, and they're color coded. Now I can see that one's relative, and it's looking there. The blue one is looking there, and that one's correct. So you can look through them one at a time and make sure they're pointing to the right area. And sure enough, right there I can see, oh yeah, it's not I made a mistake. That last one, and I can look up here and say, oh, it was supposed to be locked on big M. So escape, put it into edit mode. I'm going to double click. Actually, the safer way to put it in edit mode is to hit F2. And then I can see that that B5 here is looking correctly at the big M, which is the mass of the block, right, in kilograms. So I'm going to click right there, and then I'm going to hit the F4. So when you're editing your formula, you have to come back and make sure your cursor's touching it and hit F4. You could also type the dollar signs in if you want. Control Enter. Now, I'm going to drag. I could double click and send it down, but it won't go all the way because it's stopped. Oh, it did go all the way. Wow. I think that only happens in Excel 2010. I'm going to Control Z. Oh, I copied it all the way down. So yeah, we can just double click, and it replaces all those. Now I'm going to come down to the last one and check. Looks like I'm auditing this to make sure I got it all correct. I'm going to click Escape. All right, now I'm going to scroll back up. We have our M, our F of M. This is the acceleration of the block up the ramp. Now, I also want to do acceleration down the ramp. And the formula is just slightly different. Notice there's a minus G instead of a G, minus little m, and a plus m. So those are the only changes. So watch this. I'm going to do a little trick. Notice when we copied it, we used the fill handle in the corner and our angry rabbit. But we can copy this formula and paste it over here, and then just edit it just a bit. Now notice that cell reference right there, when read as a relative cell reference, says, hey, from the point of view, me, the formula, where am I always going to look? One to the left. So that's why Escape. When I copy this, Control C and click, that's copy. And then I click here and I Control V, put it into edit mode, F2. You can see, oh, look at that. That's looking one cell to my left. The relative cell reference worked perfect. Now we need to build the increments just like we did here. But let's edit this. This has got to be a minus instead of a plus. So I'm just going to put a minus. Right here, this is the little m. Right there, it's positive. There, it's negative. So I'm going to put a minus. And then right here, there's a plus instead of a minus, so I'm going to put a highlight. In edit mode, right, I can do just like in Word, highlight it and type a plus. Now I want to build my formula equals, starting for the start m down is going to be a different number, 0, equals this relative cell reference plus the increment, and I'm going to hit the F4 key. Control Enter, and then I'm going to drag it down. Notice you can't double click because there's nothing to the left or right or below. So when you first do this, I'm going to drag it down. But now watch this. Now I can go double click and send it all the way down. I'm going to click here and audit it. It looks like it's correct. You always go, you don't need to check every single one. You just go to the bottom and check the bottom one. Now we have our two plots. And we're going to make our XY scatter, or F of M scatter. It's important when doing a XY scatter is you have your X's here and your Y's. Now we have a slightly different set of M's than over here. If they were the same, you'd actually have this column right next to it, and then you would highlight all of it and plot it. But we have two different ones, so we're going to have to create a chart based on this data, and then add this after we create this. All right. Highlight this whole table, click in one cell, and as long as this data table is not touching anything else, you can use Control A to highlight. Notice it got everything. I'm going to go up to Insert, Scatter, and we want a line here. Our increment is at regular intervals, so we can use this. If it wasn't and we use this, the line would be pretty all over the place. But boop, and there we have our plot. Now we're going to do a number of things. First, we like this because when we add this second one, this will indicate that the blue is for up the ramp. This title is not very good. But I want you to notice something. We have our formulas up here. We can actually link this label to this right here, which would be helpful. So I'm going to, with that selected, notice you can select different elements. But once you select it, you click up on the formula bar, and all formulas start with an equal sign. So you type equal. I'm going to scroll up using this vertical scroll bar, and I'm going to click in A1. Notice there's a formula now that says, hey, I'm looking at that cell. And it also has the name of the sheet. I'm going to hit Enter. Now, that's ridiculously big, the font. So I'm going to go up to the Home ribbon, and I'm going to click up here. As long as this is highlighted, click up there and type like 8. Enter. Or whatever size you want. I'm going to keep it 8 just to keep it small for now. But you'd change it to whatever you want. Now, whenever you do an XY scatter, you got to label the X and Y or M and F of M. So I'm going to go up to, with the chart selected, notice there's context-sensitive ribbons. If I click in the cell over here, oh, they're gone. I click back on the chart, there they are. Chart Tools, and I'm going to go to Design. Actually, I'm sorry, Layout for our vertical and horizontal axis labels. Label group, there's a bunch of things, chart title. We want this one. I'm going to do horizontal first, maybe below. Now, this one is M. So I'm going to do the same thing as before. Make sure it's highlighted. Click up here. Equal sign. Click on the M. Now, the F of M has two different. I have a label here. A equals F of M, acceleration of the block. And over here, it's different. So I'm going to simply type this one out. I'm going to add a label, but I'm going to go up here. Layout, Labels, Axis Titles. This one will be our vertical, either rotated or vertical like that. I'm going to say rotated. And I'm just going to type. Now remember, when this was highlighted before, we went up here, but we can just type. And it's kind of counterintuitive, but it's A, and you can see it start to appear up here. Space equals F, open parentheses, M. Oops, I have a 9 there. And Enter. All right, now our last task is to add this set of data. And I'm going to kind of make sure that this is out of the way, because we're going to have to, in the middle of editing this, highlight these columns here. So I'm going to go up to Chart Tools and Design. Select Data. In fact, this is the #1 trick when it comes to charts. And the reason why is because a lot of times the charts, I'm going to click, oh, it got it right. A lot of times the chart, when you highlight data and create your chart, it guesses wrong. But here, it's showing us right there the whole highlighted area. But the important part is the legend entries or series, that's the numbers, and then the categories, the horizontal categories. Now, this isn't in the terminology used with X and Y scatter, but horizontal is X, this is Y. For us, this is M, this is F of M. I'm going to click Add. Oh, and it's polite. It says series name, X and Y. So the name, I'm going to click right there because I want that to show up in my legend. Notice it shows series 2, but when I hit Tab, it shows up there. And then the X, I'm going to click in the top cell, and watch this. I'm going to hold the keyboard shortcuts Control-Shift, down arrow. Control-Shift, down arrow. You can just click and drag. Tab. And this is very important. This equals array symbol 1 is always there. You got to delete it. If you don't delete it and you go and highlight, then it tends most of the time to wreck your chart. Now, here we got rid of it, delete key. Now we can click and drag. Now, notice I'm doing it this way, right? That was kind of slow. I'm going to highlight this and just show you that it is possible that way. But I always like to click there and Control-Shift, down arrow. As long as their data is data all the way down, it knows to go to the end and stop. Now I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to click up here. You could see it's got a slightly different set of values here. When I click on this one, a slightly different values. Those are the ones from, I don't think it'll let me scroll up. But anyway, that's that one. So we've added our extra data series. I'm going to click OK. And now we have our chart. maybe I'm going to click here, and you can layout legend, and I'm going to say top. That way it'll serve as a, there's a chart title, but this will be at the top also. You can also extend the size if you want it, bigger that way, bigger this way, however you want to do it. Very important to have these labels here so you know what the X and Y is, and then all of this if you want. Now, the big test is, and I'm going to have to scroll down. You can use the zoom. That's not for printing, it's just what you see on the screen. Or you can hold the control key and roll your little wheel on your mouse. Control and roll. That works everywhere. Word, Internet Explorer. Let's do the big test. Can I change this? I'm going to change my start for right here to 0.5. And everything changes. Everything updates. Our increment is going to be 0.02. Notice this all changes. Just like that. Everything changes. And that is the reason that Excel was invented back in 79 to 81. VisiCalc was the first spreadsheet, and the whole idea, Frankston and Bricklin were the guys who invented it. That was their idea. You build your formulas and charts based on formula inputs. You change an input, and everything updates. All right, that's how to plot a function in Excel. Be sure and get your inputs here. Build your formulas, build your chart, and then watch the magic of Excel as you change your inputs. All right, see you next video.